Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting session of Uplift HR Webinar series. And I'm Serap Zel, founder of Uplift. As Uplift, we live and breathe recruitment every day globally. And today we'll be talking about how important to build effective talent strategies. And we have very special guests today, Matthew Mercer-Elgenia. Hi, Matt. Welcome our show today. It's great to have you.
Hi, lovely to be here, Sarah.
Thank you. So I would like to maybe start with a quick introduction about Uplift as well. Like if you have not heard about Uplift before, so we have a global recruiting team, around 25 people. We work mid to senior level, talent search globally, success-based approach we have, and we place talent in 54 different countries in many different industries so far. So we are very excited to host this session with Matt today. And Matt, actually, Matt and I think met over a year ago, Matt, right?
That's right.
More,
Yeah, it was.
yeah, exactly. And Matt actually delivered a great training to our Uplift team about advanced level talent sourcing strategies. And that was a very eye opener for all of us at Uplift. And he continued with some of the coaching, one to one coaching sessions as well with our team. So we saw tremendous value on our job every day. So, Matt, maybe, I mean, I have highlighted a few things here, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background and how you came
Yeah,
to this point.
yeah, absolutely. So, hello, everybody. So, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Matt or Matthew. I don't mind either way. So, I've been in recruitment for coming up to 14 years now. So, I joined in 2010. And throughout that long time, I've worked in both agency and in house, about 50-50 split in terms of the years in both. And as it says there, I mean, most of my expertise lies in sort of technical, niche technical recruitment across a variety of different sectors. More recently, kind of focused on the data science, machine learning, and the sort of deep tech space. But also have worked in a law firm before and in automated engineering. So have got kind of a bit of a broad spectrum of roles that I've looked after. And the last role I was in was at Meta. And I was a senior technical sourcer there, focused on sourcing senior to sort of principal lead level machine learning engineers for the teams in Europe. So then last year, unfortunately, after the sort of Meta layoffs, I decided to set up my own business, Tech Talent Delivery, which is a training and coaching business, which really is to work with talent acquisition teams to help level up their sourcing productivity and help transform their top of funnel as well. And I've had the pleasure of working with clients like Serap and the team at Uplift to help improve their sourcing strategy and get sourcing to the sort of highest level it possibly can be.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Matt. And today's agenda is about effective talent strategies, talent search strategies, including talent mapping and Boolean operators. And Matt has the magic formulas. Actually, he's really making creative strengths to really find those talent on spot, and of course keyword analysis as well as the sourcing principle, like narrow first then wide. So we'll be exploring that a little bit. And at this point I will stop sharing my screen, Matt, and I'm giving the stage to you, and let's kick off.
Perfect.
And by the way,
Absolutely. Thank
while
you.
you are sharing, and I would like to tell our participants that we don't see you, but you can actually interact with us through the chat. If you write your questions and comments, I'll make sure that I'm reading while Matt is going through the presentation. So, and also we will be we are recording this session. We will be posting also on YouTube later. We'll be sharing the links on our LinkedIn page. Great.
Awesome.
Here we go.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. So, yeah, welcome everybody. Thank you for giving me your time and attention this morning. So, as Sarah said, we're going to be covering off what is an effective talent search strategy and how we can build that on today's session. So, we're going to start by just looking at basically 4 pillars of an effective search strategy. And I've included a quote there from Jim Rohn. For those who don't know, Jim Rohn is a bit of a legend in the sort of personal development space. And really, I like this quote because it talks about really focusing on the fundamentals, the basics, and doing them well and doing them consistently is the path to success. So the 4 pillars that we're going to focus on today are talent mapping and talent insights. We're going to dive into the language of Boolean, what it is, and how to build Boolean strings. We're going to explore a sourcing principle I like to follow called narrow first, then wide. And then we're going to finish off by looking at keyword analysis and diving into sort of building our understanding of different jobs and markets that we're working in. So starting off with talent mapping and insights. So this is really the preparation and gathering data and insights ahead of a search that we're carrying out. So what is talent mapping? So talent mapping, really, it's a research process. It allows us to develop a report on the talent market, and essentially it allows us to identify where potential candidates are. And that might be in terms of their location, geography. It might be which companies they're employed at as well. And it also gives us insights into the hiring preferences of the hiring manager that we're recruiting for as well. And this is a process that we carry out before we starting our search to avoid wasting time in the wrong area. Again, I've suffered from this in the past where a new job's come on, it's really exciting, and I just dive straight into the search without doing any preparation before. And naturally, that comes around to bite you in the bum because you essentially have to kind of go back and look at the mistakes that you've made. So doing this upfront preparation is really important. And particularly if you're facing a challenging permanent role, or if you're going into a new client meeting, or perhaps you're researching a new market. So a tool that's excellent for this is LinkedIn Talent Insights. Now, LinkedIn, for those of you that don't know, if you have a LinkedIn recruiter license, you should now have access to LinkedIn Talent Insights. LinkedIn gave this feature away now. It used to be a paid for additional product, but it's now integrated with LinkedIn Recruiter. So if you have a LinkedIn Recruiter license, you can double check whether you have access to this. If you navigate on your standard LinkedIn page to the For Business sign that you can see in the top right there, and then under Talent, click on Talent Insights. And what you should see is the following page come up. And there's 3 types of reports that Talent Insights gives us. There's the talent pool report, the company report, and the your company report. And for the purpose of this presentation, we're going to look at the first 2. The last one is more to gather insights on your own company. So there are certain use cases, but because we're talking about searching, I'm just going to focus on the first 2 to begin with. So to get started, the talent pool report. This is a macro report on talent and industries. And it's important that you include relevant industries to the one that you're hiring in. It's worth noting that different companies have different assigned industries to them. And so you might find that some direct competitors may have different industries assigned to them. So for example, say I'm searching for pharmaceutical companies, I might also want to include biotech companies as well, because there are some competitors that are labeled as biotech companies, but they also have a pharmaceutical arm also. By contrast, the company report is a deep dive into specific companies. So this allows you to research clients or direct competitors and go much deeper into their teams. And there's a really useful tab, which we'll explore in a moment, which is called the Talent Flow tab. And this helps you identify the flow of talent to and from that team, i.e., where have they been headhunted from, and sort of where are they losing people to as well. So here's a screenshot of the talent pool report that I pulled the other day. So what you can see on the left is immediately, if you're familiar with LinkedIn Recruiter and other areas, you will see that the number of filters is a bit more restrictive in Talent Insights. And you'll also notice that I've avoided using the job title filter. And this is probably a really useful tip to know. The problem with the job title filter is it relies on very standard data being input by the user. So if somebody's put in a very unique or different job title, or even if they've misspelled the job title, they won't come up on your search. So for this reason, what I recommend, and what LinkedIn recommends as well, is that you use the skill filter, or if you click down here in the advanced filters, you can have the keyword filter added as well. So for this example, I've set the location to Germany. I'm looking for product managers with artificial intelligence experience. I've done those two skills and separated with and then I've looked in the financial services and banking industry. And what you can see is that we get a high-level overview of this report, which includes where they're located, how many people are in this talent pool, and things like who are the top employers of that. And we also get additional insights like how many jobs are being advertised and what the gender diversity is like for this set of skills. By contrast, the company report, as I mentioned, is a deep dive into a specific company. In this case, I've selected Deutsche Bank as the company I want to look at. Again, I've selected Germany and also product management, artificial intelligence in the skills section. And now we can see that the opening screen is a little bit different. We still have these stats around the sort of numbers and the locations, but the talent flow tab, which is up here, we get an insight into what this is down here. So we can see where they've lost people in this team too. So we can see Element, Boehringer, PPI have hired and headhunted people from this team. And we can see where they've hired people from before to join their team as well. And this starts to give us data and insights about feeder companies that we can look at potentially headhunting from. So in addition to LinkedIn Talent Insights, you can also do more detailed and granular talent mapping on LinkedIn Recruiter itself. And what you might find is when you're running a search on LinkedIn, you'll see the number of results and you'll see search breakdown immediately to the right of that. And this gives us high-level insights onto the search that we've just carried out. So, for example, I've run a search here that I'm looking for machine learning engineers in Europe that have got experience with natural language processing. And I can see that Meta, Amazon, and Apple are the top 3 hirers of those types of skills. And in the past, IBM, Accenture, Amazon are other companies that have hired this type of skill set previously. I can also look at the average years of experience. We can see here that in fact, most of the years of experience is quite high. It's 5+ years, generally speaking. But interestingly, they don't spend very long in their positions. So typically the average is 1 to 2 years maximum. It's rare for someone to stay in this position for more than 5 years, which again is useful data for me to know when I'm reaching out to candidates, because I could potentially identify candidates that have been at their company for 3+ years and reach out to them as a matter of priority so that we can look at potentially getting better returns on our response rates.
Matt, just one quick question that I see from the chat box. Layla was asking, she says, my talent insights still ask for a cost to be paid. Are you sure it's now integrated into Recruiter? I know LinkedIn has different recruiter seats, right? Maybe that's related with that.
They do. Yes, I think it is. So I think if you've got LinkedIn Recruiter Lite, you won't have access to it. I think it's the full professional
RPS,
that
right?
allows
Recruiting
RPS.
Professional seats.
Yeah. So if you don't have access to it, then it's because you don't have the full LinkedIn Recruiter. If you have got the full LinkedIn Recruiter, then I would reach out to your account manager to ask them about that, because you should now have been given access to it.
Exactly. And that was integrated just a couple of months ago, I guess. It's quite new.
Not long ago. Yeah, LinkedIn were they did do an email announcement about it, but it was quite it went a bit under the radar for a lot of people.
Okay. Thanks, Laila, for the question, and thanks, Matt, for the answer. Okay,
no problem. So, as well as looking at the broader talent market and competitors, this is also a process we want to carry out with the hiring managers team as well. And this will give you insights and data into the hiring manager's preferences, which can be really, really useful when you go into a job briefing. So let's say I want to do the same insights for the hiring manager that I'm working with at Meta. So I've put in these strings into LinkedIn Recruiter. So I've got the job title as machine learning engineer. I've got European countries in locations, and I've set the current location to Meta. And then I've got keywords relating to NLP. And if we look, we can actually then see where they've been hired from previously and the total years of experience. In addition, we'll see things like the education. And this is a really helpful practice to do when you're going in, particularly with new hiring managers. I had an instance a few years ago where I was working on a data scientist role and the client wanted a candidate. They were adamant that they wanted a candidate that had a PhD. But when I carried out this process before the job briefing, I found that about 70, 80% of their team only had a master's. So when it came up in the conversation, I said, well, look, I can see that about 70% of your team just have a master's. If I found someone that had a master's but had everything else that you're looking for, are you telling me that you wouldn't want to see them? And they conceded that actually they still would. So again, data just backs up being able to challenge and push back on expectations going into the meeting.
And Matt, I think this is very, very important. I remember one of the case that we used talent insights on LinkedIn and really helped a lot to us because one of the clients asked us to look for a sales leader based in
Mm-hmm.
Netherlands, but 2 hours from Amsterdam is like a little bit. Not at the city center, is a bit far from city center, and they were
Mm-hmm.
looking for someone who has experience in sales, in logistics, and who can speak Dutch, obviously, and as well as French or German. And
Mm.
also, they said that the role is hybrid, so the person should be really living close by in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So when we jump in this talent insight and we looked for again like the postal codes and everything, like where how many people we can reach out, like we selected the language skills and the industry, etc. And we found
Mm-hmm.
only like there are 50 people available, and not all of them are at the expected seniority level. So it really helped us to manage the expectations of the hiring manager,
Mm.
who is looking for perfect candidate in that location, but there is also limited talent availability. So then we look for other criteria. Okay, what we can flex is in terms of
Mm.
seniority, location, language criteria. So I think that the insights definitely is a great tool to add into our strategy.
Absolutely. No, that's a really good
Hmm.
case. And like I said, it's about having that data available to you to be able to act as the expert. Because remember, we're experts, we're consultants going into these meetings, and I think a lot of recruiters feel, particularly new recruiters, they feel as though they have to be led by the hiring manager about what they want. But in a lot of cases, the hiring manager has no real idea about what the wider talent market
Yeah,
is and what is available. And so it's our job to educate them, and we do that by leveraging our knowledge, but also data that's available out there.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Great. So the next tool that obviously all of you have heard about, unless you've been living in a cave, is generative AI. And obviously, there's lots of different tools out there. It's a really powerful tool, and this is probably one of the best use cases in recruitment I've seen for using generative AI. Is actually using it for talent mapping. And with the right prompts, you can get it to list out companies to headhunt from in certain locations, and you can get things like salary information from there. Now, of course, it's worth making sure that you cross reference with the information shared because it has been known to hallucinate at times. But thankfully, if you use ChatGPT Pro, which I do, so it's on now version 4.0, or a tool like Perplexity, they actually cite their sources of where they got the information from when they're searching the web. And so you can then go and cross reference that information. But again, you can get these tools to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, particularly if you don't have access to, say, LinkedIn Talent Insights or LinkedIn Recruiter, because tools like Perplexity, for example, are free to use. So again, really, really powerful. But like I said, just make sure you're cross-referencing the data that it's providing you to make sure that it is accurate. So over time, this process should take you about half an hour and no longer than that. And after you've done it, you should have the following information. So you should know which companies and feeder companies that you can headhunt from, what locations are going to be the best source of the talent for you, the hiring manager's preferences based on data from their existing team, and then also other information around salary, education, backgrounds, and the typical years of experience as well. So now we've carried out our talent mapping and our data, we're now going to create the building blocks of our search. And that starts with creating Boolean strings. So a short history lesson for you all at the moment. So Boolean comes from the work of the prominent British mathematician George Boole, and his work can be found in all computers and electronics that exist out there, with the logic of theory of mathematics, where variables are either true or false or on or off. Now, in our case, as recruiters and sourcers, Boolean allows you to combine different operators that help us find a desired answer, which is known as the variable. And in recruitment, this allows us to speak the language and of the search engines and structure our search to allow it to be much more accurate. And if we were going to express this in a mathematical equation, it would look something like this, where we have two keywords that we're looking to combined together. The plus is the operator, and then the X is the variable, which is the outcome. In our case, it would be the candidates that we're looking for. So what are the common Boolean operators? So starting off with and. So if we take two keywords, recruitment and HR, and we write them in the following string. Now, one thing that's worth mentioning with all of these operators, you want to write them in capital letters. There are some search engines that accept them in lowercase, but most of them will fall over if you use them in lowercase. So make sure you're using and in all caps, otherwise it won't work. So here we've got recruitment and HR, and we're simply telling the website that we only want to see profiles that have both keywords in them, both recruitment and HR. And if we look at that as a Venn diagram, we can see that the green colored in area in the center is where we're focusing our search. So here we're looking at recruitment or recruiting. And now we're looking to tell the website that we're looking for profiles that contain either the keywords recruitment or recruiting. And it's a really useful operator to tell the website to search for related terms or synonyms. So again, you can see on the Venn diagram that we're looking for people that either have both or one or the other. So it's a very broad search that we're carrying out. Not, I'll get on my soapbox a bit. Not is probably the most overlooked and underutilized Boolean operator by recruiters, even with 10 plus years experience. There's recruiters out there that refuse to use it, but it's really, really powerful in improving the accuracy of your search and helping remove false positives as well. So again, we've got an example, recruitment, not HR. And here we're saying that we want to find profiles that have the keyword recruitment, but exclude those that have the keyword HR in them. So if we look at it in the Venn diagram, it would even exclude profiles where they have both recruitment and HR, because we're saying we don't want HR in the results there. Now, other use cases of this can be to remove things like seniority, so candidates that are too junior or too senior, particular companies, maybe you have an NDA with that you don't want to headhunt from, or a particular skill that's just not relevant to what you're looking for. And what I always advise is when you run your search, do a cursory glance through the results, identify any false positives or irrelevant profiles, and then go back and update your string with a not to remove those. And it will just save you so much time when you start reviewing the profiles rather than diving straight in. So brackets, these are used to group similar keywords together, or categories of keywords, as I like to call them. But interestingly, it also follows the theory of mathematics, which is the order of operations, i.e. it tells the search engines which keywords to search first or give priority to, which really isn't overly, it doesn't really have any impact on our search, but it's just worth mentioning. So if we take this example here, so I've got Python or Java and software developer written out. Now, if I paste this string as it is into a search engine, it will be interpreted like so. It will be interpreted as Python or Java and software developer. So it will split them out. And the problem is that that's going to bring back results that are too broad. So for example, we may get people back who aren't software developers, but they've used Python in some other capacity, or we may even get like a zookeeper who looks after pythons as part of his day-to-day job. So there's no relevancy to the software developer. So what we want to do instead is add our brackets to contain the two categories, which in this case are the programming languages, and make sure that it's combined with software developer. And if I put these two searches head to head on LinkedIn Recruiter and I set Greater London to the location, the first string brings back about 290,000 results. The second string brings back 38,000 results. So the accuracy has improved massively just by including those brackets. Yeah, there we go. Quotation marks. So the final string, sorry, Sarah, you've got a
Yeah,
question
and
or?
no, actually, we feel like we are back to kind of college years, right? So looking at the maths classes, but it is really nice to see we can use this operators in different ways and get different results each time, and really find maybe a couple of new people with the new formula that we write, and it's really fascinating, and it's, I think, really depends on your creativity as well, and math intelligence.
Absolutely. And actually, somebody's mentioned in the chat as well that LinkedIn's now introduced the can have, must have, doesn't have
Yes.
criteria to select against your strings, which is basically the equivalent of or and or not, which allows you to separate out the different categories as well. So that's a nice feature that they've introduced to help you be a bit more creative with
Yeah.
your strings too.
Yeah, it's nice to
So
see
the
these new
final,
features from LinkedIn. That's nice.
it is, it
Yeah,
is
we need.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the final one is the quotation marks. So essentially, if you're looking for multiple keywords that you want to be considered as a whole phrase, then you need to use quotation marks to group those together. So if we take this example, product manager. Now, if I paste this keyword as it is, product manager, into LinkedIn, LinkedIn would read it as product and manager because white space in most websites is considered as and. And so the problem there is that I would get profiles that have both the keywords back in them, but they might not be related to one another. Now, the one caveat to that is that if you pasted this in, say, a job title filter, you'd be saying to the search engine, I want product and manager somewhere in the job title. So there's a good chance you would get product management professionals, but equally you would still get false positives that people have multiple titles that all include manager and product somewhere in them. So in order to search these keywords as a whole phrase and combined phrase, we use quotation marks. And as we can see here, we've done product manager, and that will just bring back candidates that have product manager in that order of words. So before we move on to building our sort of string and using the examples, I want to talk a little bit about a sourcing principle that I sort of teach to all of my sort of learners as we go through, and that is narrow first, then wide. Narrow first, then wide is a principle where when you start a new search, it's much more efficient and time saving to start your search narrow and then go wide. What I mean by that is you take all of the requirements of the role that have been outlined to you in the job briefing and the job description, so essential and desirable, and you use that to create your first string. And you keep it keyword light. So you only use the keywords that you have got from those sources to begin with. So you don't worry about broadening out the synonyms or anything, that comes later. And what will happen is that you'll end up with probably only a handful of candidates, but those candidates are probably going to be a very good fit for the role that you're looking for. And the good thing there is that you can then immediately get them into your pipeline to start contacting them straight away. Then once you've gone through those narrow results, we will then look at broadening out the search. And as I mentioned there, it also gives you excellent foundations for your Boolean strings as well by having all of the different narrow strategy categories listed out also. So if we were to visualize this, the narrow search, we start with a very small pool, keyword light searches based on the keywords we find from the job brief and the job description. After we've run that, we then broaden the search out by doing research on previous profiles. We use keyword analysis, which we'll look at later. And we start to enrich our keywords in our Boolean strings to look at different terminology and natural language that might be included. And don't worry, I'm going to show an example of this as we go along. What I say as a general rule of thumb, the narrow search, ideally you want to aim for about 30 or less results with the narrow search. If you're getting more than 50 or 100, your search is probably too broad as it stands. And I would be adding more criteria in there to narrow that down. And then when you move to the wide searches, I also suggest that you try not to get back more than 100 or so profiles. That's about 4 pages on LinkedIn Recruiter if you consider there's about 25 results per page. Now, why no more than 100? Number one, it's a pain to be able to go through multiple pages of searches, so your attention span and interest will wane. You'll also start to get more and more irrelevant profiles the further along the pages that you get. So a better approach is to try different types of wide searches that bring back similar number of results, i.e. less than 100, but with different profiles. And you can try doing that with lots of different combinations of filters, different keywords in your search as well. So you're iterating on your wide search multiple times to bring back lots of different candidates each time, but keeping your search results in a realistic size so that you'll be able to review all of them rather than have 10 plus pages, which you're unlikely to get through. So let's put this into action. So we're going to start and create a Boolean string from scratch. And here's a job description that I pulled off LinkedIn. I have shortened the amount of essential and desirable requirements. There was a lot more than this, but wanted to keep things fairly simple. So we're looking for a senior machine learning engineer based in London, and we've got our list of essential and desirable requirements listed out there. So what we're going to do to begin with is we're going to highlight the keywords and the terms that we're going to extract and use in our Boolean and our filters. So what I've done is those highlighted in blue, I'm going to turn into a Boolean, and those highlighted in orange, I'm going to use in specific filters that don't accept Boolean. And again, I'm doing this in LinkedIn Recruiter, but again, you would apply this to job board or your own ATS CRM, again, depending on the types of filters that you've got. They're more or less the same across areas, but they're there as well. Go ahead, Sarah.
Matt, just a quick question on. I think we also use ChatGPT or other systems that you mentioned, AI solutions, help us to create this Boolean strings as well, right? I mean, when we put the requirements,
Yes.
is that really
So
reliable? What do you think about that?
so it is, but you have to train ChatGPT and other generative AI to write correctly. It does fine with standard Boolean. So the operators I mentioned before, it does okay with. Sometimes it mixes up it doesn't put a quotation mark in, or it misses a bracket, which can be a bit frustrating. So what I tend to do is feed it existing Boolean strings that I've created with a narrow search like this, and then I ask it to build on that from there onwards. So you have to train the AI. I saw a really good post the other day that said, you've got to think of generative AI as an intern that's just come out of university. They've never done any work before, but they're pretty smart. But you have to coach them so that they learn how to do it properly. So bear that in mind when you're using generative AI for any task,
Yeah,
including Boolean as well.
that there's still that human touch needed in this case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take the blue highlighted sections and we're going to now create our Boolean strings and categories. And what I tend to do is I have these listed out in a Word doc or a Excel spreadsheet. It's depending on what your preference is. A category of Boolean is essentially terms that relate to one another. So you can see here, I've got a job title category, programming, a cloud category, one around leading teams, and then one related to container tools. And you can see here that I've kept it very simple. I've just taken the keywords out of the job description. The only addition I've made is I've expanded on some of the keywords with like AWS. So AWS stands for Amazon Web Services, GCP, Google Cloud. So I've done a couple of tweaks here and there, but for the most part, I've kept it broad. You'll also notice I've put an and between senior and machine learning engineer. The reason I've done that is I want to account for people that may not put senior machine learning engineer in that exact order. They might do machine learning engineer, comma, senior, or they might throw some other characters in there, which I haven't accounted for. So I'm allowing a bit of flexibility with that particular search. So taking those Boolean strings, this is what we end up with. And again, I'm going to show this in LinkedIn Recruiter as well. So for your information, the job title and the keywords filters on LinkedIn are open text filters, which means we can use Boolean in them. It's the same for companies as well, but the location, fields of study, and industries are select only filters, i.e., LinkedIn has a selection of data that have set categories that you have to select from. And so in this case, London, the computer science, and the software development, they're all pre-assigned categories that are on the platform. So I have to use those in this instance. So running this search on LinkedIn Recruiter, we get 6 results, which isn't many, but I review those, and actually 3 or 4 of them look pretty damn good, actually. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to message them straight away, get them contacted immediately. And we've now got the foundation of our narrow search. But of course, unless we have incredible luck, and for those of you who've been in recruitment as long as Serap and I, you've probably had 1 or 2 instances where you only had to search for a few candidates and then you filled the job, but they don't happen that often, so we've got to be realistic. And so now we've got to go and widen our search out to look for more options. So that's when we come to keyword analysis and where we start to widen out our Booleans. So keyword analysis, whenever you start in a new area, and this was exactly for me when I started working in data science and machine learning about 5 years ago, I had no idea the level of jargon and terminology that I would be met with, but there was a lot of it. And it can be quite overwhelming to wrap your head around it. And what's really important to know is the keywords that you select to use will directly impact how effective your Boolean strings are. So if you just throw keywords into your strings without understanding them and understand the context, you're going to get a lot of false positive and irrelevant results, and you're going to be frustrated and left scratching your head. So keyword analysis is essentially a research process that helps develop your understanding of the jargon and the keywords, but also helps you find other related terms. And that's what we're going to look at now. So there's 3 steps that I typically follow to help uncover and find out new keywords. So the first one is keyword stripping. So if I go back to those 6 profiles that I found with my narrow search, I'm going to look at those that have a lot of different keywords in them and looking at extracting those and testing those out and adding those to my Boolean once I've made sure they are relevant. I'm also going to come back to using generative AI. I'm going to give AI context of what I'm searching for. I'm searching for a senior machine learning engineer based in London. And then I can either copy and paste my existing strings that I've got and say, could you review this string and then add an additional 5 synonyms or related terms that I haven't already included? And what generative AI will do is it will show you the terms, it will tell you what the terms mean, and then it'll also rewrite your Boolean string for you, which is quite helpful. Or if you prefer, you can just say, here's the context of the job I'm looking for. Please give me some additional terms that I can use for this particular category. So there's a couple of different ways you can use it, but generative AI is very good at research. And so this is a really good PowerPoint of a use case of leveraging its knowledge. And then also for you tech people out there who recruit tech professionals, there's a really, really good Chrome extension called Glossary Tech. It's a free Chrome extension, and it was made for tech recruiters in mind. It has about 1,500 technical terms on there, and it opens on any web page. If you're reviewing a CV, a website, a profile page, whatever, it will extract all of the technical terms it can find and then provide you with a glossary. And this is what it looks like in practice. So basically, I've gone to my page here, it's extracted out all of the terms it can find, and then if I click on the glossary, it gives me a nice description of what that term actually means. And so that means I don't have to keep going back and forth, checking Google, seeing if that's relevant or not. And as I mentioned at the bottom there, it's important to test the keywords out. So make sure that you're rechecking that the term itself is relevant to what you're looking for. And if you're still not sure after you've checked, just avoid using it in your search, or test it out with 1 or 2 searches, but don't include it in the main category as well. So I've carried out this process. This was my original narrow string for the senior machine learning engineer job beforehand. And now I've carried out my keyword analysis. I've added all of the highlighted terms as additional terminology in there. So you can see I've really expanded out the job title. I've expanded out all of the different categories of keywords in there. I haven't changed anything else with any of the other filters. I've kept them as they are. And if we look at the results, so we had 6 results beforehand with a narrow search, but now with my wide string, I get 31 results. So I've added an additional 25 candidates to our results from this process. And as I mentioned earlier, we won't stop here. This is the first wide search we've done. We want to iterate on that. And we can do that a number of ways. We can try different LinkedIn recruiter filters. So for example, we could use postal code and do a radius search rather than use the location filter. We could also take out the desirable criteria from our string and just focus on the essential criteria. And it's all about trying out different combinations. And again, this is why having your categories of strings in a spreadsheet or a doc is really helpful, because you can keep track of what you've tried out so far when you're going through these different iterations. And of course, if you're using LinkedIn Recruiter, it's got the helpful thing of saying hide previously viewed, and also removing candidates that belong to a project that you saved them in already. So you're not treading over the same ground as before. So to finish up then, we've covered off the 4 pillars of starting our search and getting our search underway. Of course, from here on in, you've got a great foundation of your search. You've got the data from the talent mapping. You've built out your Boolean strings. You've already got the best fit candidates in your pipeline and being contacted by being narrow. And now you're starting to add to your long list with the wide approach. And you're building your understanding with keyword analysis. And from here, this is where you then go to start applying this to other search engines, start applying more advanced sourcing techniques like implicit search and natural language search and so on, to really start to develop it. But this gives you the bedrock of a really effective search. And that is it. Thank
Yeah.
you, everybody, for listening. Any questions
Great.
at all?
Thanks a lot, Matt. And of course, I mean, our participants, if you have any questions, please write on the chat. And I also would like to thank you, Matt. And I think that was a great summary of the Boolean operators and the strategy that we should create. And I totally agree on this narrow, wide, first of all, narrow first and then wide strategy, because it really helps us to save time as well. And because otherwise you can go hours and hours, look for all possible option candidates. But we always say uplift that work smart, not hard. So we need to bring those qualified candidates as soon as possible to our clients. And so I think this is the really best strategy that works really well in daily life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was having a chat with one of my sort of network, Steve, yesterday about this, and he was sort of putting forth the case of going wide then narrow. There are instances where you would go wide and then narrow, and that's when you're researching a new market. So, if, for example, you're doing a broader search on a new market, and you just want to get a feel for what kind of candidates are out there, you could do a wide search to start with and go very, very broad. But if you've carried out the research before with talent mapping and building up your understanding, it's far better to start narrow, because it's about improving your sourcing productivity, which is getting the most relevant candidates as early and efficiently as possible. And
Yeah.
that's why the narrow then wide approach is what I follow.
It's work, yeah, definitely. And Ben ask a question for levels. Do you recommend including the titles in the Boolean search or using the alive filters? This is for executive
Yeah,
search, he
great.
says.
Yeah, great question, Ben. So, yeah, you're right. So, in job titles, you also get selections of job titles that LinkedIn provides as standard data. I would recommend, Ben, that you don't use those and you actually rely on Boolean. The reason being is that if you think back to what I was talking about in Talent Insights, LinkedIn has these designated job titles, but it doesn't represent what the natural language that people will use. So, for executive search, people will call themselves director, VP, head, and then but sometimes they'll call themselves like regional or global or something. And if you don't include that in the drop down, then it's going to be missed. And also, The other challenge is that you can't do things like it's sort of, if somebody is using non-standard information, you'd be surprised how many misspelled job titles are out there. Those people won't be included. So the filters that LinkedIn provides that you select, they're very standard, but they don't account for that human language. And some people have very bizarre job titles that exist out there. And so, actually, going back to my point about widening the search, one thing that I would do is I would stop using the job title filter and include the job titles in the keyword section to broaden the search out further, because they might not call themselves what you think they're going to call themselves in the search. And so it's better off to search the skills and capabilities instead.
Yeah, perfect. So, Fiona, we will be sending the YouTube link to everyone. So after the session, and Lida asked a question, Matt. Any insights on how machine learning hidden LI algorithm affect our Boolean searches? Good question.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Lydia. So obviously, LinkedIn engineering are a little bit closed about what's going on there, but people in the sourcing community like Irina Shamieva, who runs BooleanStrings.com, which is a terrific resource, by the way, for all of you aspiring sources out there, has been in contact with LinkedIn engineering. So we know some things, like, for example, first degree connections will tend to be pushed down the results in as you run a search on LinkedIn. And also, LinkedIn tries to include a amount of diversity in the results on the first couple of pages. So people from ethnic minority backgrounds or female candidates, if you're searching in tech, for example, will be tried to be brought forward. So these algorithms work. It's precisely for this reason why it's good to carry out lots of different iterations of your wide search, because you're then testing LinkedIn's algorithm and trying different approaches to uncover people that perhaps haven't been filtered. Another example is that people who aren't very active on LinkedIn or don't have much information on their LinkedIn profile at all will appear lower down on your search if they appear at all. So again, this is why we need to try different iterations of searches too.
Okay, great. So maybe the last question from Raj. Would you change your strategy if you had LinkedIn free account? If yes, how?
Good question, Raj. Yeah.
Yeah,
So unfortunately, Boolean on the LinkedIn free account is a bit. I've been testing it a bit the last couple of weeks. It's been a little bit difficult. They try and make you be more reliant on the filters. So in that case, I'd still carry that out on LinkedIn, but I would probably also use something like Google X-Ray. So doing searches of LinkedIn on Google X-Ray. Now, LinkedIn have taken some steps to restrict the amount of data that's indexed on other platforms like Google, but it's still possible to run searches on LinkedIn as well. Unfortunately, we don't have time to kind of go into the nuances of that. That might be a future webinar we do together about Google X-Ray, but that's what I would do as well. But outside of that, it would be a case of searching, connecting with people in the network that I'm searching for to have lots of first degree connections, because that improves the quality of my network. And then I'll be able to search based off those first degree connections too. And of course, if you want, you can use a premium account. You can use Sales Navigator as well to do some of this for you as well, if your budget's a bit tight, because we all know LinkedIn Recruiter is quite expensive. Certainly for me, and I'm a
indeed.
one business person. I'm a one business person, so yeah, it's a most
Indeed.
expensive cost for me.
Definitely. But thanks a lot for all questions and comments. And we are really happy to see that it was a useful session for all of you. And thanks a lot, Matt, for joining. And as you said, I think we need to have maybe a second session together, maybe
Yeah,
more
yeah,
like on advanced techniques and some tailor-made strategies. But thanks a lot. It
absolutely.
was great to have you. And thanks a lot for all the insights you shared that are very valuable.
No, thank you for having me, Sarah. It's been great fun, and hope everybody enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you. Take care of yourself. Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.